So, hello everybody and welcome. Hola a todos y bienvenidos.
First of all, my name is Maritza.
Yo soy Teacher Chris con Open English.
Hello everyone and welcome back to our second class of the day. We are back here live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and gonna go live here on Instagram. So welcome back everyone and let us know if you are here. Tell us in the comments if you're here for class number 2, if you were here for class number 1, let us know in the comments. And remember guys, this second class today is 100% in English. So we will practice our listening skills and hopefully you guys will get some good tips about having, or I guess for when you have an interview in English. So welcome everyone. JML, Chema, how are you? I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Caro Jaime on YouTube. Nice to see you again. Santiago and Maximiliano on LinkedIn. Hello, nice to see you both. Sonia, nice to see you here on Instagram. Henry from Colombia. Hello, hello. All right, got lots of people connecting. Excellent. Jasmine Garcia on LinkedIn. Darwin, hello. Lou20924, no entiendo nada. Don't worry, this class is 100% in English, but the important part is that you're practicing listening. So I know sometimes having things all in English can be difficult, but that's when we begin to learn. Zaida from Bonaire, hello. All right, Robinson David, okay. Maybe we need to work on our English, but don't worry. That's why Open English is here. So remember, we are currently in promotion 2 for 1 with Open English. So buy one course, get the second one free here in Open English. So if you need more information about our promotions, about the schedules, about how Open English works, about how you can sign up and start learning today, send the word PROFE, P-R-O-F-E, in the comments for more information. Okay, for more information about Open English, send the word PROFE now. So this class today, I will be sharing some tips for having an interview in English. This can be sometimes really scary, but very necessary. So let me see here, just catching up with your comments here on Instagram. Pedro Tang, love it. Love that you're here. Welcome, welcome. Ready for some tests? Karen, I need to improve my English for my job. Karen Joanna, I think interestingly enough, I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine. So you always hear like, you need to speak English, you need to speak English. People have grown up with knowing that they should speak English, but nowadays it's really important to be able to speak and express yourself in English, usually for a job. So I think since 2020 and the pandemic, now a lot of people, we got Lupe snoring in the background here. If you've connected to a class before, you probably hear some snoring. But nowadays, people are working remote. So you can work from lots of different locations, cities, countries around the world. However, if you would like to be able to work in another country, maybe earn in dollars, English is so important. So the first step is to be able to have an interview in English, correct? All right, so let's get into my tips for having an interview in English. Okay, so tip number one. And while I read my tips, Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had an interview in English? And how did it go? Good or bad? Let me know. Have you ever had an interview in English? Let me know in the comments. So tip number 1, practice responding to key questions. Practice responding to key questions. This is really important um, to kind of understand or anticipate what someone is going to ask you. Okay, really important. So here are 4 of the most common questions that you might hear in an interview in English. Let me see. I'm going to add something here to our class, just so everyone knows what we are talking about. There we go. So job interview tips in English. So our first key question, and that's almost, I think I've never had an interview personally where someone did not ask me this question, and that is, tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself. So people want to know about you. Tell me about yourself. Usually people will start off the interview. So, hello, my name is Sarah. I'll be doing the interview. I'd like to know more about you. Tell me about yourself. So my suggestion is have something really short, but to the point, very direct with what you want people to know about you in English. Alexander says, yes, you've had an interview in English and failed. Oh no, Alexandra. Hopefully with these tips, your next interview will go a little better. Okay, so Lee says, not yet. Not yet. Okay, Santiago says, yes, and it was terrible. Santiago, was it terrible? Maybe you didn't understand, or was it difficult to answer the questions? Why did it go terribly? Okay, interesting. Caro, I had been in some English interviews and I realized that I need to improve my English speaking. So for that reason, I'm currently studying at Open English. Caro, excellent. Very good. Okay, let me see. Anyone else? Has anyone else had an interview in English before? In English. Okay, so number two, this is another common way to start a question, an interview question in English. So many people say, could you tell me about a time when, for example, you didn't get along with, or maybe you had problems with a coworker? What did you do? So this phrase is very common in English job interviews. Could you tell me about a time? They're specifically asking for you to talk about a specific situation. So be ready to have examples. Okay. KLY Lugo, yes, but a medical interview was crazy. I messed up. A medical interview sounds very, we have a word in English, daunting. So daunting is like, it sounds a little scary, like a high pressure situation. So medical probably would be pretty tricky. Okay, let me see here. So number three, a lot of jobs ask for, what can you bring to this role? What can you bring to this role? So lots of times when people are talking about the role, it's the job itself. So what could you bring to this role? The person is asking, what do you offer? What is something special you offer this role? Okay. And number 4, I think this question in Spanish, in Portuguese, in lots of different languages, this question always comes up. So what are your biggest strengths? What are your biggest weaknesses? another common question. Mauricio, what does role mean? So in a job interview context, role is another word to say job or position. So lots of people don't, job sounds a little informal. So people will say, what can you bring to this role? But they're specifically saying, why are you applying to this job? So it's another way to say job or position. Job or position. Okay, let me see here if there are any other questions. Don't forget, you can send your questions here in the comments. Okay, Karen says, in this question, my response, experience, my knowledge about taxes or something. So what can you bring to this role? Karen, Joanna, I would say this question, it's important to, yes, talk about your experience and knowledge. So what I hear a lot is people are interested in what you know and what you've done. So lots of times people say, well, I'm a good team player and I'm a good listener. But really, it's important to talk about, okay, I'm a team player because I did this. They want to hear about specific experiences that relate to the job. So it's always important to provide examples of what you've done. So Karen, exactly, your experience, your knowledge, be as specific as possible. Be as specific as possible. Okay. Let me see. Mary says, I had one interview and I thought I was doing good because even the lady told me so was pretty good. Okay, you were pretty good considering the fact you were still learning English. But at the end, it was a failure. I did not get the job. Mary, I think, first of all, congratulations for getting an interview in English. That's a huge accomplishment. And I think lots of times, maybe we think, okay, I'm not great with English, and that's why I didn't get the job. But I think this is a really good time to reflect that you survived a job interview in English, and that is major. That is a win. That is a huge step. So even though you didn't get the job, congratulations for overcoming that fear and for doing it. Okay. Raquel, my role was to answer calls. So your role is the specific job title. For example, my role is being a teacher, or my brother, he is an engineer. His role is a computer science engineer. So he's in charge of specific things. It's basically your job title. When we talk about role in English, we're not talking about your actual responsibilities, but what you actually do for a job, your job title. Okay. All right, Kato says, I couldn't agree more with you. Nowadays, the most important is to demonstrate with examples our experience and knowledge. Exactly, Kato. Very good. Excellent, excellent. All right, checking here for any other questions. So moving on. Tip number 2. It's very important to study general key vocabulary. So this is really important. You want to know specific general verbs. This will definitely help you in a job interview. So for example, hire, the word hire. This is another way to say to contract someone. So it means to offer them a job. It means to, when someone starts a job or they accept an offer, they are hired. They are hired. This is when you are contracted. So that's an important verb to know in English. Or, of course, number 2, resume. Resume. So don't confuse this word with resume, which is another verb in English. Resume is your, as they say, curriculum vitae. It's what shows all of your work experience. So resume is a very important word to know during the interview process. So recruiters will look at your resume. All right, number 3, we all want to know about this word, salary. Salary. So this is the pay. This is what you will be paid. So many jobs will say the starting salary is $50,000, for example. So minimum 50,000 for an entry level position, for example. So salary is the pay. Okay. And number 4, an offer. An offer. So this is when a job says, okay, we want to hire you. Here is our offer. And they have all of the conditions. They have all of the conditions of the offer for the job. Okay, so let me know here in the comments. Do you have a copy of your resume in English? Send a blue heart if you have a copy of your resume in English. Let me know. This is very important as well, to have your resume ready to go in English to get that new job opportunity. So let me know. Evelyn, welcome. Welcome to our class here. So we're talking about tips for an interview in English, job interview tips. So let me know. Itzen Aguilar on LinkedIn, blue heart, you have your resume in English. Excellent. Caro, Raquel, Andres, excellent. That is a huge start. That is a very big start, to have everything ready to go in English. Okay, let me see. Alexandra also has her resume in English. Very good. Marisela, great start. All right, Jennifer, very good. Okay, so if you want a new job and you want maybe a job that earns in dollars or a job where you can work remote, it's very important to get that resume in English first. Ignacio, what is resume? Okay, so this picture, this second picture here, it's where you list your experience. So it's talking about where you studied, if you went to university, if you have educational certificates, and your job experiences. So that is a resume. Names Melissa, yes, I have a resume in English. Excellent, wonderful start. All right, very good. So tip number 2, study English vocabulary, very important. Okay, number three. So I think the people that answered earlier that they've had job interviews that have really not gone well. Maybe this tip was something that maybe could have helped for your last interview. So this is practice with a mock interview. So mock in English means like a pretend interview. It's not a real interview, it's a practice interview. So we say mock in English. Practice with a mock interview. So this is really important, especially if you feel nervous. I even do this for interviews in English. Even though English is my first language, I still like to practice. So find a friend or a partner to practice with. The good news is that with Open English, you can actually practice job interviews with a native English-speaking professor. So that's the good news. Open English, we have live classes, and in a private class, you can tell the professor, the teacher, hey, I have a job interview in English I need to practice for. Could you practice with me? So that's a great opportunity to practice with a native English speaker. So my third question here is, who do you like to practice English with? Is there a special person you like to practice English with? Let me know here in the comments. Or maybe you need to find someone to practice with. Okay, Raquel says, how can I practice with a native professor? Raquel, in our platform, we have live classes. So if you have private live classes with Open English, that's a great opportunity to connect with a professor one-on-one. However, in our group classes as well, there are sometimes different themes we talk about in the live classes that will also help you prepare for an interview. So once we start practicing speaking English in any context, it doesn't always have to be in an interview situation. The important thing is to practice speaking so we can start to overcome our feelings of nervousness. Okay. All right. Andres says, find a video on YouTube. I did it. Okay, Andres, YouTube is a great resource as well to practice certain questions, answering certain questions. There are lots of tips on YouTube of how you should answer questions in a job interview. Okay. All right. Yes, Raquel. In the classes, you can say, I want to practice, or I need to practice. I'd like to improve this area, or I need to practice a job interview. Exactly. It says, I need to find someone to practice with. All right. Let me see. I don't think this girl is native. I am a native English speaker. Yes. Spanish is my, I guess, second language. I learned Spanish, but I'm a native English speaker. Okay, let me see. Any other questions? Who do you guys like to practice English with here on Instagram? Okay, I practice with friends and alone as well. All right, so yes, it's possible to practice alone as well. I always suggest try to record yourself or look on YouTube. Find a question, job interview questions, pause the video and respond to the questions. So you can practice with videos by yourself as well. Okay, Kato says, during an entire month, I was practicing interviews with the private classes at Open English, and it was very useful and helpful experience. Excellent, Kato, very good. Okay, Nanny says, well, I like to practice English with my friends, family, teacher, and especially I like to create a language immersion environment. That is step number one. Surround yourself with English. Surround yourself with English. Okay, Lenita, do you want to practice with me? Of course, Lenita. We'll have to do maybe one of these days in a live class. We can do I have to think about how we would do it, but an actual live interview, or maybe teacher Chris and I can do a mock interview together in a live class so you guys can hear how it sounds. Okay, Andres says, thanks for the stream. I need it. All right, Andres, excellent. Even if you don't have maybe a job interview in English coming up, hopefully this stream is important or beneficial to your listening skills. That's our hope here. All right, so I originally said we'd have 3 tips, but I couldn't stop at 3. So let's check out tip number 4. This is really important. This is really, really important for a job interview. Practice repeating numbers and dates. I think lots of times we are thinking, okay, I'm a hard worker. I like to work from my house. We have these answers ready, but we forget about the importance of numbers and dates. So this will be important to talk about your past experience. So if we're talking about previous jobs, we should know how to say different dates correctly. So we wouldn't say on the 20th of February, that sounds a little strange in English. We would say on February 20th, I went on a medical trip to Uganda where I learned this skill. So it's important to be able to talk about dates correctly. to talk about your past experiences, benefits, and of course, salary expectations. Again, salary, that money, the money talk. Really important to be able to talk about large numbers and what your expectations are for payment. Okay, so let me see here. Let me see here. Just a second, your comments here. So remember, if you're applying to a company and only speaking in English, it's more than likely that that company may be from another country. So it's important to understand vocabulary about benefits as well. So I will tell you guys a little bit about me personally. My husband is applying to jobs in the US. And of course, the benefits are very different than what he's used to in Colombia. The vocabulary, there's lots of vocabulary like dental, vision, 401k, retirement. So lots of different words like that when we talk about benefits in English that they're important to know. It's important to know that type of vocabulary. So practice repeating numbers and dates and that key vocabulary again. Okay, so just an extra tip as well. In addition to our live classes where you can practice for an interview with Open English also has a professional English section on the platform. So in the platform, we have different areas of careers or jobs. For example, we have a marketing section, a sales section. I believe there's a human resources section now, a design section. So you can actually look at the different areas or career areas and find the one you work in so you can practice vocabulary that's specific to your job field. So that's really important with Open English is our professional English section. It's not just repeating phrases, but actually studying something that you actually that you work in. So really important. Let me see. Looks Maggie. If there's a dentist section on the platform, I don't believe so. I don't believe we have a specific dental section, but we do have. I was just gonna say. I don't think it's really related to dental, but I think the closest to something medical that's on the platform is nutrition. But either way, it will hopefully be good vocabulary. Good vocabulary. Okay, let me see. Any other comments here? No, doesn't look like it. All right, so moving on to tip number 5. Tip number 5. So nowadays, lots of us do interviews online. So we don't have to go to an office to have a face-to-face interview. Maybe it's completely remote. It's through the computer. So use this to your advantage. Use this to your advantage and prepare notes. Prepare notes. If you have the opportunity to have a kind of computer interview, prepare notes. It's not, I wouldn't recommend writing out everything you want to say in English because it won't sound really natural. But I think sometimes we get so nervous in job interviews that we forget about what we really wanted to say. We forget about what we really wanted to say. And then afterwards we think, I should have said this. So write out key points that you think are important, things that you think, I cannot forget to mention this. This is very important. Write some notes. Take some notes about the company so you can talk about the company and show your interest. Sometimes I think we read about a company, but it's a lot of information to memorize. So take notes about the company. And something I always do is I always take notes with 3 or 4 questions that I want to ask at the end of the interview. This is very important. Lots of interviews, especially I can only talk about my experience in the US, but usually companies from the US, they always want you to ask questions at the end. So instead of saying, no, I don't have any questions, have your questions ready. Write them out, and have them ready to go. So if you are having a remote interview, take notes. Take notes. So my last question for you guys is, what do you think is the most difficult aspect of a job interview? What is the most difficult part of a job interview? What do you guys think? Let me know here in the comments. What is the most difficult part of a job interview for you? Let me see. So I think for me, the most difficult part is being able to talk about my experience. I think that for me is really difficult. I know what I've done, but sometimes I forget to mention important things. And so I always think after, like, oh, I should have said that because I didn't follow my own tip and I didn't take notes. So let me know here. Okay, Lenny says the question, tell me about yourself. Yes, I totally agree. Tell me about yourself. It's kind of it's such a big question to ask, right? Okay, let me see. Alexandra says controlling nerves. So Alexandra, my best advice for nerves is to practice as much as possible. If you don't have anyone to practice with, practice basic questions by yourself. Like I mentioned, go on YouTube, look up job interview questions, and have a practice interview with yourself. So listen to the question, pause the video, and respond as if you were actually in an interview. Okay, the most difficult thing is the pronunciation in English. Yes, Jennifer, so that's another important reason to practice. Okay, I think controlling the nerves and not thinking in Spanish. Yes, I think our nerves always are a big factor. And I think that applies to any job interview. Maybe it's a job interview in Spanish, but still it's a high pressure situation. I think that's what makes it especially difficult because we feel nervous for any job interview, but a job interview in another language, it's pretty difficult. But that's why practicing is so important. Practicing is so important. Okay, to avoid forgetting anything important, it's mandatory to prepare and practice. That is key. Oscar, I completely agree. I completely agree. Okay. Okay, Jose Alberto. So, like, why should we hire you? Why should we contract you? I think that question is really difficult as well. I always kind of want to say, because I want to work here, because I want a job. But that question is difficult as well. Okay, let me see here. Okay, or Jose Alberto says, so like, what sets you apart? What makes you different from other candidates? That's another difficult question. So definitely these difficult questions, it's important to prepare to be able to speak about your experiences with concrete examples, and it's important to practice and take notes. All right, everyone. Okay, well, that concludes our class today. Thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully there were some good tips here for you guys for your next interview. And don't forget, like I mentioned, in Open English, we have live classes where you can practice with a native English speaking teacher. We have an interactive professional English section on our platform as well. So if you need more information, send the word profe, Profe, in the comments so we can get you all the information you need. And don't forget, if you need to know your English level, let's say you are applying to a job and you need to know your English level, Open English has a free Open English English test, Open English test that you can take. So send the word test, TEST, in the comments for more information about our free test there. And we will be back here tomorrow with another class. Tomorrow's class won't be 100% in English. We'll do a combination. And Teacher Chris will be back tomorrow. And he will be back to talk about, he will be, oh yes, tomorrow it's Valentine's Day. So Teacher Chris will be here with some vocabulary to talk about Valentine's Day at 11 a.m. Colombia time, which is 10 a.m. Mexico time, 1 o'clock Argentina, and those are all the time zones I remember. But we hope to see you here tomorrow at 11 to practice some more English together. Wilkes Maggie at 11 a.m. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you guys next time.